I remember the exact day Alcon moved in. I was 15, curled up on the arm of the old couch with a notebook in my lap, pretending to read but really just watching him. My mother, Sarah, had met him during one of her alumni conferences. He was a guest speaker, a professor of psychology at the university. Dark-skinned, black hair that curled just slightly at the ends, a rough but neatly kept beard, and eyes that felt like they could see every unspoken word. She brought him home like a new beginning. He smiled at me that day, warm and unassuming. "You must be Lily. Your mom's told me you devour books faster than she can buy them." His voice was calm, deep, like someone who'd never once rushed a sentence. I mumbled something polite. But inside me, something shifted. I didn't understand it then. Not fully. I only knew that when he sat next to my mother and their knees touched, a pulse of something sharp and sour settled in my chest. I hated how easily she could reach for his hand. I hated that she laughed at his jokes with that careless kind of joy. I hated that when she said goodnight, he followed her up the stairs. He was never anything but kind to me. He made space without being overbearing. Helped with homework if I asked, remembered I liked my tea with 1 spoon of honey, not 2. When my friends visited, he gave us privacy. When I played music too loud, he didn't scold. He asked what I was listening to. And still, I resented the way he treated me like a child. I didn't want to be his daughter. I wanted to be seen. It was subtle the way things changed. Quiet moments became sharp with awareness. I'd linger just a little longer in the kitchen when he was there. Let my gaze hold his just a second past casual. When he drove me to school, I'd tilt my face to the window, pretending not to notice the way he occasionally glanced my way. One morning I wore lipstick, just a soft coral, but I'd never worn it in front of him before. He looked up from his coffee, eyes catching on my mouth for a split second too long before he cleared his throat. "New look?" he asked. I shrugged. "Just experimenting." He gave a small smile, something unreadable behind it. "It suits you." That afternoon, I wiped it off in the school bathroom. It didn't feel like a compliment from a father figure. Felt like a crack. I started testing those cracks. Little things. Laughter that lingered, brushing past him in narrow hallways, sitting beside him on the couch a bit too close, tucking my legs beneath me so my shoulder touched his. He never pulled away. But he never leaned in. One night I stayed up late, working on an essay about emotional intelligence, one of his lectures, actually. I heard him come down for water and called out softly, "Can you read something for me?" He paused in the doorway, glass in hand, shirt wrinkled from sleep. "You should be in bed." I handed him the laptop anyway. 5 minutes. "I want your opinion." He read it carefully. Quietly. When he finished, he looked at me, thoughtful. "You have a gift. Not just for words. For understanding." "I mean that." My breath caught. I think I whispered thank you, but my ears rang with something else entirely. Longing. Confusion. Heat. He hesitated. "Lily," his voice dropped. "I need you to be careful." "With what?" I asked, but I already knew. He set the laptop down. "You're still young." And he stopped himself, rubbed the back of his neck. "Someday, when you're older, maybe you'll see things differently." It was the closest he ever came to acknowledging what simmered beneath. That night, I stared at my ceiling for hours, playing his words over and over. Someday. I carried that someday like a secret. Through my last year of high school, through college applications, through every goodbye kiss he gave my mother in the hallway. He was never mine. But I never stopped wishing. When I turned 18, he took me out for coffee, just the two of us. He said it was a small tradition he had to mark milestones. I wore a pale blue sweater I knew brought out my eyes. "Happy birthday," he said, sliding a book across the table. A worn copy of The Ethics of Ambiguity by Simone de Beauvoir. "I thought you'd appreciate the irony." I smiled. "Are you calling me ambiguous?" "I'm saying," he paused. "You see the world in layers. It's rare. And dangerous sometimes." I opened the book slowly, pretending not to notice that his fingers trembled slightly when they brushed mine. Everything had changed. His name was Bruce. He had wide shoulders and a lazy grin that made it easy to laugh even when nothing was funny. He wasn't brilliant, not the way Alcon was, but he was simple. Direct. comforting in that mindless sort of way. Maybe that's why I said yes when he asked me out. Maybe it was to distract myself. Or maybe I just wanted to see if Alkan would notice. He did. Began subtly. Alkan offered to drive me places more often, even though I had my own car. Just passing by, he'd say casual. I was going to grab a coffee anyway. He started making tea in the evenings again, 2 mugs now, one for himself and one that always waited for me on the counter even if I didn't ask. Mom didn't seem to notice. She was busy as always, clients, meetings, late-night emails. Alkan, though, suddenly had time. He'd sit on the edge of the porch steps while I painted my toenails. He'd ask about Bruce, what he was studying, what his plans were, what I liked about him. I don't know, I told him one evening, stirring a spoon through my tea. He's nice. He listens. Alkan looked at me from over his book. That doesn't sound like a glowing endorsement. I smiled faintly. Are you jealous? He didn't answer at first. I'm trying not to be. The silence stretched between us like thread pulled too tight. Later that night, I found a folded sheet of paper tucked into the book he'd lent me. It was a quote, handwritten, underlined in pencil. We cannot suppress desires simply because they are inconvenient. The soul does not negotiate. No signature. No commentary. But his handwriting had always been unmistakable. I held that paper in my hands for a long time. One evening after dinner, Mom left for an overnight client retreat. I helped clear the plates, and Alkan stayed behind in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, drying the dishes I rinsed. I can't decide, I said lightly, if you do this because you're polite or because you're watching me. He set down a plate and looked at me, really looked. I used to think you were just a clever girl with too much imagination, he said slowly. But now you've grown into someone I don't know how to see anymore. The water kept running. I said nothing. He turned the faucet off. You always knew, didn't you? That I saw you. Even when I wasn't supposed to. I faced him. You told me to wait. You were 15. I'm 18 now. He exhaled, as if the truth hurt more spoken aloud. It hasn't made it easier. I stepped closer. My heart thundered. Then why does it feel like you want it just as much as I do? He looked torn, as if something in him was fighting tooth and nail to hold on to the last edge of moral ground. Because I do, he whispered. And I hate myself for it. I reached for him then. Without thinking. Without planning. My hand brushed his chest, and I felt the heat there, the steady rhythm of a heart beating far too fast for a man so composed. Don't, he said, but he didn't move away. I waited, I said. You told me to grow up. I did. I am. He stared at me with something feral and afraid in his eyes. And then I kissed him. It was desperate, messy, full of all the restraint we'd buried for years. He didn't kiss me back at first, but he didn't stop me either. And then something inside him cracked. His hand was in my hair, pulling me closer, his breath shaking. When we finally broke apart, I was gasping, dizzy with it. Why didn't you do that before? I asked. Because I was trying to be good, he said, his voice hoarse. But you're not a little girl anymore, Lily. And I'm not made of stone. We stood there in the stillness, the weight of what we'd done sinking into the kitchen tiles like spilled wine. The next day, everything felt unbalanced. He was careful, distant again, but his eyes betrayed him. Every look lingered. Every accidental brush of fingertips felt charged. I was electric around him, alive in ways Bruce never made me feel. Bruce, for his part, had no idea. We sat on the campus lawn with coffee and shared jokes and playlists, and I smiled through all of it, even as my thoughts drifted to stolen glances in kitchens and half-whispered confessions in the dark. That night, I caught Alkan watching me again as I came home, still laughing from something Bruce had texted. I walked past him, brushing his arm lightly. You were always too calm, I whispered. Now look at you. He grabbed my wrist gently. His thumb traced the inside of it. You're playing with fire. I smiled. So are you. He let go. I'm supposed to protect you, Lily. Then don't leave me wanting. He said nothing. But I knew then, the dam had cracked. The flood was coming. The first time I lied to Bruce, it was over something small. He texted, "You free tonight?" And I wrote back, "Study group." Late one. Really, I was in the library cafe with Alcon. He had suggested it like he always did, quietly, without pressure. You said you needed help with your psych paper. If you still want it. We sat in a back corner, old texts spread between us, the lamplight pooling in soft halos. His eyes were darker under the yellow light, and I caught myself watching his hands as he turned pages. Hands that once brushed the small of my back in the kitchen like an accident. I still haven't told Bruce anything, I said quietly. Kun didn't look up. You shouldn't. Not yet. He thinks we're still just talking. Flirting. Are we? He met my eyes then. Just talking. I didn't answer. He leaned back. You're building a wall, Lily. Careful one. Bruce is your alibi. And you're my secret. He didn't flinch. I don't know if that makes me proud or ashamed. Maybe both. Sometimes when my mother was out, Alcon and I found pockets of time. Tiny worlds folded between hours. He'd find me on the back porch reading. I'd say nothing as he sat beside me. Our knees would touch. The heat would build like pressure before a storm. Once I asked him, "Did you ever really think of me as your daughter?" Question hung between us like a razor blade. No, he said. Not even once. We kissed again that night. Longer this time. More deliberately. And still we stopped before it became more. Always just before. He would pull away first, guilt in his breath, forehead resting against mine like a confession. I can't. Not like this. Not yet. But I saw how his restraint cost him. How the edges of his resolve frayed more with every stolen moment. Bruce was easy. Predictable. We'd sit in his car and listen to songs I didn't really like. He'd kiss me with the sweet smell of soda on his lips, and I'd pretend I didn't feel hollow afterward. At night, I'd lie in bed and replay every time Alcon's hand had lingered too long on mine. Every time his voice went low when he said my name. Every half-finished sentence he swallowed instead of speaking aloud. One evening, while Mom was still at work, I found him alone in the den grading papers. His sleeves were rolled, glasses perched low on his nose. There was music playing, soft jazz, the kind you only hear in late-night movies about cities that never sleep. I sat on the arm of his chair and waited for him to look at me. He didn't. Have you ever asked me about Bruce? I said. More than once, he replied without looking up. I mean, really asked. He set the paper down slowly. Okay. Tell me. Have you and Bruce? He didn't finish. He didn't need to. I met his eyes. No. I haven't. His throat moved as he swallowed. Why? I shrugged, teasing. Because maybe I was waiting for the professor to teach me the theory first. His eyes darkened. Don't do that. Do what? Turn this into a game. I tilted my head. Who said I'm playing? He stared at me, unmoving. Lily, you don't understand what this means. What it could cost. I'm not a child. He looked at me like that truth was the hardest part of all. No, you're not. I moved from the chair to the floor beside him, resting my head against his knee. He didn't touch me, but I felt the tension running through him like live wire. I think about you, I said softly. More than I should. Closed his eyes. God help me, so do I. I turned and looked up at him, cheek pressed against his leg. Then why are we always stopping? His hand moved, hesitant, until his fingers brushed my hair. Because if we don't stop, he whispered, there's no coming back. We came close again. So close. It was after dinner one night. My mom had gone out with friends, laughing, not suspecting a thing. Con stayed back, washing dishes, and I lingered in the doorway. He dried his hands and looked at me like he was already bracing for a decision he didn't want to make. I shouldn't have kissed you, he said. But you did. I know. And you want to again. I do. I stepped closer. Then stop running from it. He didn't. He reached for me, pulled me close. This time it wasn't rushed. It was slow. Intimate. His fingers brushed my jaw, my hair, my throat. Kissed me like he needed it to breathe. But just as quickly the world rushed back. The front door clicked. We flew apart, hearts pounding. My mother's voice called from the hallway. "You two still up?" I answered first, breath shaking. "Just talking." Con stepped back into the kitchen. "She's working on her essay." I was helping. "Well, don't keep her up too late," Mom said cheerfully. "Big day tomorrow." We waited until her footsteps vanished down the hall. I looked at him. He looked at the floor. And we said nothing at all. It was strange how quickly a house could become a stage. Every glance between us a secret script. Every word rehearsed to sound natural. My mother would walk in and ask if we wanted coffee, and Alcon would answer too quickly. I'd avoid eye contact. Quiet between us felt louder than ever. It wasn't just desire anymore. Something had shifted. It happened one morning. I came downstairs, still wrapped in a blanket, and found him in the kitchen, shirt sleeves rolled, pouring my coffee the way I liked it even before I asked. I said nothing. Just leaned against the doorway and watched him, and something about that moment made my chest ache. Not because it was wrong or secret or forbidden, but because it felt like home. That scared me more than anything else. Sarah started noticing. Began with questions disguised as casual remarks. "You two spend a lot of time talking, huh?" she said once, pouring herself a second glass of wine. "You're always tucked in the den with your books." "Psych class," I said. "He's a professor." "It helps." She smiled, but her eyes flicked between us longer than they used to. A beat too long. Her smile didn't quite reach her mouth. Later that night, I heard them arguing in their room. Something low, tense. "You're distracted lately." "I've been grading. You know how midterms are." "It's not just that. You're different." I held my breath, ear pressed to the wall like a child again. But then came the worst sound of all, silence. The kind that carries the weight of things not said. I started picking more fights with Mom. Little things. "You forgot to sign my scholarship forms." "Well, you should have reminded me." "You always remember Alcon's calendar." "That's not fair." But it was. And I think deep down she knew it. She started asking about Bruce. "Still going strong?" she'd say, eyes narrowed like she was trying to read something between the lines. "Totally," I'd answer. "He's taking me out next weekend." But Bruce and I hadn't kissed in over a week. I couldn't stand how his touch felt lukewarm compared to the fire Alcon left in his wake. I went to Alcon's study late one night, under the excuse of needing help with a draft. "I can't keep pretending," I said. "Not around her." He rubbed his temples, looking tired. "We're not pretending, Lily. We're hiding. Is there a difference?" He looked at me, eyes full of guilt and something deeper. "She doesn't deserve this." "And I do," I asked, voice trembling. "Do I deserve to feel like a ghost in my own house, watching the man I love lie to everyone, including me?" He stood up slowly, walked to where I sat, and crouched beside me. "I don't know what to do," he admitted. "I've built my life with her." "But my heart," he stopped, shaking his head. "My heart isn't there anymore." His hand reached for mine. And in that moment, we both knew there was no going back. The blow-up happened the next week. It started small. A dinner that spiraled into a storm. Sarah had made risotto. We were quiet around the table, but the silence was jagged. "So," she said, stabbing at her food. "Lily, have you told Bruce about your late nights with my husband?" The fork froze in my hand. Gun looked up sharply. "Sarah." "No. Let's just say it." Her voice cracked. "I'm not an idiot, Alcon. You've been different since she turned 18. And she looks at you like you invented the sky." I swallowed hard. "It's not what you think." "Then what is it?" she asked, eyes gleaming with betrayal. "What is it, Lily?" I couldn't answer. Because it wasn't just some mistake. Or one night. Or a confusion. It was real. Kun stood slowly. "This isn't how we should do this." Sarah laughed bitterly. "There's no we left, Alcon." Then she turned to me. "My daughter." Her voice was hollow. "How could you?" I wanted to scream that I'd been invisible for years. That I had begged for closeness and no one saw me except him. That she hadn't once asked me how I felt since I was 15. Only ever expected me to behave, to fit into the shape of a daughter she needed, not the woman I was becoming. But I said none of that. Because she wouldn't hear it. Because she was breaking. And I was the one who broke her. Con stayed in the guest room after that. Bruce stopped texting. Mom started working late again. The house grew quiet, the way it had been before any of them moved in. Just walls and air and memory. But one night I found Alcon out on the porch, sipping tea, wrapped in his old gray sweater. I sat beside him without speaking. "I never wanted to hurt her," he whispered. "I know. She was good to me. Better than I deserved. You didn't choose this." He turned to me. "Didn't I?" I placed my hand over his. The silence between us was different now. Not heavy. Just honest. "This isn't over," I said. "Not the fallout. Not the pain. I know. But neither is this." He looked at me then, really looked, and for the first time in weeks he didn't flinch. "No," he said softly. "It isn't.